Hi everyone, how are you doing today? Hey, I see a lot of people already on the chat. That's pretty nice for a Saturday afternoon. How's the weekend going? Zappa, I just saw your message and I'm definitely going to answer. But first, let me fix the webcam. I put the green screen on today for the scene after, and I just realized that doesn't work right here. I can't do much because that's actually the wall on the side, so I can't do much more. New flat, yes, Roy. I just moved in this week, and yeah, that's kind of stressful, busy, yeah, situation. It's pretty cool though. I'm really happy with the new flat. I really like it. It's just moving in. Always takes a lot of headspace and everything. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm still getting everything ready, and I'm still kind of messing things around. Like I don't know where to find bread, or I don't know where to find my forks or anything. So I'm still getting used to where everything is. But yeah, that's pretty nice. And the light is actually slightly better for video. I mentioned that the other day on the Discord, I think, but it's kind of more diffused. So I have to less deal with a big bright window that kind of create reflections on my glasses and everything. So I think that's actually good for that. And I have so many videos I wanted to record, and I couldn't because of the construction noise in my previous flat, and also the fact that you had different lighting all the time changing and everything. So I feel that this is going to be a way much better setup, even though you can't really see the setup right now. But as soon as I'll do another stream without the green screen, you'll see it hasn't changed. I mean, I still have a really simple background, just the paint of the flat, my plant that is still the same, and I just maybe try to put my guitar over there if I have space. I'm not sure yet, we'll see. You say that the video setup has indeed leveled up. Well, it's just I think that the lighting, it's slightly better and also slightly more stable. Like I don't have just a very bright light on the side and I try to compensate with another light on the other side. And I feel that here is just everything is more diffused, less aggressive, so I don't have to really compensate for anything. And yeah, also the green screen, that makes things easier. You just need to have a good lighting coming from front of you, and that's about it. But yeah. Okay, so Dapa, you said on the chat, you said, I don't know why, but YouTube seems much better for live streaming than Twitch lately. There has been lots of drama, lots of stuff going on with Twitch. On my side, I will say I never really have much problem with Twitch. I'm a very small channel, so I've never really had problems with lots of bots on the chat or having hate raid. I think that's one of the big problems. So I never had that. It happened once. I once had a bunch of really weird people on the stream coming all together at the same time. But apart from that, yeah, I never really had any trouble with Twitch. But YouTube has always been a very good place to live stream. I like it. I think also because of the fact that I'm doing live streams that, with all the interviews, not everyone is familiar with Twitch in the startup or entrepreneurship ecosystem. So I always found that lots of people just find it easier to understand that through YouTube you can watch live stream and you can just watch AMAs and discuss on the chat, and you don't have to first go through the barriers where you have to explain, oh yeah, come on Twitch, you don't have to create an account or anything. I tried earlier, but yeah, I just found that live streaming with YouTube at the same time is a good compromise. Roy, you play guitar? Yeah, well, I'm trying to learn, but I would say this isn't a priority for me, and so there is so many things going on. I find it hard to keep practicing, and also I don't really take courses with a professor or anything, so I just follow some online classes. And so for a while I managed to be rather consistent on watching some videos and some courses, but then what happened is that I think I kind of hit a wall where I wasn't progressing much, and also I couldn't find the right videos to go after because I ended up on the limit of the free plan, and I was like, okay, what should I do next? And so now the problem is just that I don't have much time, and also in my previous flat, my partner and I, we were both working from the same room, and so since we've been having this setup, I just find it slightly harder to get into it, you know, have a break during the day and go do some guitar on the side, moving my other computers to have the video and everything else. So I'm thinking having the guitar just next to me would be much easier. Maybe it will push me to just get to it straight away. And it's also next to my couch. Oh yeah, because what you don't realize is that this room, actually my desk and the couch and everything, it's the exact same setup as it used to be in the previous flat, which means I still have like my plants, but also the couch just next to me. And even if I try to put it out of the screen, I can't. So it's kind of the same thing. So you'll see, you won't be disconcerted by the change for sure. Zappa, you say not only drama, but the entire design of the site. So you're talking about Twitch, yes. It seems like everything there is trying to get my attention when the video should be my focus. Yeah, to be honest, I used to really enjoy all the features Twitch has to connect with your followers and people who support you and the regular viewers and everything. But even if it's good for that, the problem is that today I feel that there are so many things and I can't keep track of everything. Actually, if some of you are more active than I am on Twitch, if you have any tips on how to improve the channel or maybe things that I should be using, I know there are so many cool stuff, but it's just so hard to find what you can actually do on Twitch, apart from watching other streamers and trying to find out how they did that. Also, Metamurai, thank you so much for your bits. You sent 45 bits. Cheers. Thank you so much for that. Really, always a pleasure to have you on the stream, and I love your support. Thank you so much. Zappa, you say only Amandine hides the couch behind a green screen of the couch. That's not the same couch. The one you see on the green screen is white, and it's from my old flats. I'm always renting flats that are furnished at the moment. So the new couch is less comfy for sure, but it's grey, it's not white, so not exactly the same couch, but yeah, still a couch. But you'll see, and yeah, talking about what you can see right now on the screen, so that's my previous flat, and I don't know, I really like the red, glossy red design and everything, but as you can see on the title of the video today, I'm exploring things with virtual production and everything, and I'm thinking if I decide to switch to something slightly different or change a bit the design, I will need to change everything on the design. Like the other day I was looking at Twitch and I was thinking, oh, the description on the about page, I feel that all these panels, they're a bit outdated, but in the same time, I thought if I start redesigning these, then I may just end up redesigning everything, and I shouldn't be doing that right now. I don't have the bandwidth to do that right now. But if I start changing something, I like when you have an homogeneous design everywhere. Like, it really bothers me if I use one design on one platform and another design on another platform. That doesn't work out for me. So if I start changing something, I will need to change it everywhere, which means I will need to change, for example, on the banner on the YouTube channel, the banner on the Buy Me a Coffee channel, everywhere. Yinch, you say you could swap in a virtual couch. I've thought about that, and I've done some experimentation on that, and I'll show you later on. Thing is, it's pretty difficult. Like, having a character that is a virtual character in a virtual environment, you can make it sit on a couch, you know, you're just touching into game design basically, and so you can find some ways to find characters that are already animated, or you are going to rig them themselves or yourself, they rig them yourself. But if it's about having a real life character, a real life person, and add that into a virtual production, then the virtual couch, that is going to be something way much difficult. I mean, that means that I will need to have the camera exactly positioned at the right position, and also have the couch just coming around me. I don't know how feasible this is, but for what I've tried, I was like, ooh, that's going to be tricky. And you say, Yinch, run a competition to design a couch to be used behind you. Yeah, that would be fun though. That would be a lot of fun. So what everyone is doing on a Saturday, on your usual Saturday, because I see lots of people here, and I can understand why, because I also spend lots of time during the weekend on Twitch, just watching some streamers playing video games or doing some other stuff. So I kind of get the idea, but I'm also curious, like, is everyone just chilling out on the couch, just watching different streamers, or did you do something else during the afternoon and now you're just back? Yinch, you were programming inverse kinematics for virtual reality. I have no idea what it is. I have done some VR stuff, some VR creation and everything, but inverse kinematics, I have no idea what it is. I'm sure the name is way much complex than what it is really, right? Roy, is AI more recyclable regarding game design than traditional methods? Ooh, that's a good question. And just to bring some context around it, that's because my company, Wild Meta, is building machine learning based bots for video games. And so, to answer your question, is it really more recyclable than traditional methods? That's a good question. I would say yes, in a sense that not only you can reuse them as they are already, you know, you have the model, you have the implementation in the code, and so you can just reuse that in a different position in the game, but you can also, based on the same model, you can actually play around with the training and do more or less training, or change a few things during the training phase of the AI to change a few things in the behavior of the AI. So let's say you can actually have a first version of the model. You have the first version of the AI that is going to be the easy mode, let's say, that maybe hasn't learned everything about the game, or that may not be as fast as the harder version. And so based on the same model, you create a slightly different version that is going to be more trained, or trained with a bit more complexity or small differences. And in this way, it is also reusable, but not the exact same AI. It's like kind of the same, not the same foundation, but there are a few changes, variations of the AI. So yeah, in that sense, that could be more recyclable. And also, you can train later on. So let's say you launch your game, you have a first version of your AI that learned to play the game. Then a few months after, you realize that your players have developed some techniques that you didn't necessarily thought about, or they have their own way of playing, and you would like the AI to understand that and maybe to replicate this behavior. You can also take the replays from the players and show it to the AI and retrain it, or add to its own training so it can learn new concepts this way. So that's also a way of not necessarily just recycling the AI, but also top up the training and keeping it updated all the time. But that's me rambling about my company. Like I can talk for hours about that. So be careful if you ask me questions about my business. I may end up into giving lots of long explanations. I think it's actually helped people when they interview me doing a podcast, because I can talk for quite some time. Zappa, you are writing a game for the C64 for client who wants to do a PR stunt. Cool. Did I miss the Unreal Engine virtual production workshop by turning up 15 minutes late? No, I haven't yet launched it. I'm going to launch it right now. I was just rambling about Wildmatter, but no, definitely you haven't missed it. It's actually quite a long workshop. Well, not really that long. Depends what kind of workshop you are used to watch. It's a 1 hour workshop, and I'm pretty curious about that. I wanted to join the workshop live because they organize kind of an event where you register before, and then I missed it just because I was moving flat and just busy, and I completely forgot about it. And then I realized that it was actually available on YouTube just a couple of hours after, and it was open in one of my tabs for so long, and I just thought, okay, if I don't share it with other people, I may never just watch it at all, and that would be a shame. So I'm pretty curious about that. And also, I've never done this kind of React commentary thing, even though I watch many of them. So I'm thinking it would be kind of cool to just watch it together. And if it's, I don't know, boring, or if it's not that interesting, then we can switch to something else. Also, I'll be happy to show you the Unreal environment I created to help me unstuck myself creatively. So I reach a point where I created this nice environment, and I think it kind of looked cool, but I don't know how to use it. I don't know what to do next to really make it usable for a virtual environment. That was just basically me playing around with Unreal and just trying to understand how it works, and that's about it. But I think I ended up liking it. It's just, I don't know what to do really with that. But let's change the scene and launch the workshop if everyone is ready and up for that. Oh, I see there is also some movement on the Discord. Do I have the Discord here? Yeah, I can check this out right now. But if there's some new people on the Discord, welcome to you. That's pretty cool. Actually, I've seen a few people joining these days, so that's pretty nice. Okay, let's launch the workshop then. Right here. I haven't tested the sound, so please do let me know in the chat as soon as I launch it if it's too much, or like what's the sound on your end. That's always the thing that is hard to test out.
Hi everybody, I'm Jordan Thistwood. I'm the Product Management Director for Media and Entertainment here at Epic Games.
Yes, it works.
It's my pleasure today to take you through everything that you need to know about Unreal Engine 4.2.7. So let's talk about the new workflow possibilities that are part of 4.2.7. First off, being able to shoot wider angle shots. There are larger and larger stages happening that have larger surface areas of LED walls available to them, larger sets that can be constructed. So we wanted to make sure that Unreal Engine could power those walls, that what you could have, captured on set wasn't limited by the software. The next thing that came up was shooting with multiple cameras.
Thanks, Brian.
So not every director likes to do it, but when they do, we did not want to be the limiting factor. So we made sure that we made some changes in Unreal Engine that would allow you to use multiple cameras at the same time on an LED volume. Traveling shots. These are such you're caught between a rock and a hard place half the time. You either have to deal with the logistics, or you're shooting on a green screen stage, and you have to deal with the fact that you're not getting your proper reflections, which are such a compelling part of all this. Up to 4.2.7, there were a couple missing parts, and we'll talk about why 4.2.7 solves the problems with traveling shots. All right, and then interactivity. We really wanted to make sure that you could get out there and be on stage, make layout changes, make color corrections, make lighting changes, and still shoot on the same day. We're not talking about breaking for hours or days, we're talking about breaking for minutes, and being able to have a completely compelling creative workflow on stage. And so even to the point where you can do interactive lighting effects like we tested on our test shoot. We also didn't want to leave out the pipeline side of things. USD is a very important, growing piece of technology that is being adopted in many pipelines. And if it's not being currently adopted, it's being evaluated. So we wanted to make sure that we were unlocking workflows that would use USD to give you the best of what it is capable of.
Does anyone knows what USD is? I'm actually not familiar with that at all. Let me check. USD. Of course, if I type USD, that's not going to find anything on its own. Okay. I thought it was kind of a tool, but no, apparently it's just a way of doing things. Okay, well, let's continue. I really hope that it's going to be a bit more about something we can reproduce, rather than only for big, major productions.
So let's get into the core technology improvements that are involved with 4.2.7. The first of which is really fundamental to so many of these workflows and so many of the features, is multi-GPU support. This is what allows you to have those wider camera angles where we can actually fill the screen with enough pixels and enough resolution at the frame rate that you need to actually capture that wider angle. The multiple cameras shooting at the same time, same deal. The interactive feedback that you can have on set and making those creative choices and still shooting within minutes, not hours, again, powered by multiple GPUs. But what does it mean? So if we take a theoretical stage setup, so here we've got a photo of the Nant stage in LA. We say, all right, well, let's divide this up into 8 viewports. You've got 8 viewports. That typically would have meant that you've got 8 machines. That's 8 machines that are just running the wall, not your artist workstations, not the brain bar, and not your any sort of failover redundancy. That's an expensive setup. So multi-GPU means then
especially
that
today,
you can reduce the number of render nodes. Each render node can have multiple GPUs, which can then have be powering up a viewport. For stage configurations, we do find that 2 GPUs is the sort of the best sort of price performance consideration. So when it comes to shooting with multiple cameras at the same time, there's a few details that are really important in this. So the ability to shoot with multiple cameras has benefited from the multiple GPUs. You are allowed and enabled to set up multiple cameras, not just 2. So you can set up all the cameras that you might possibly need for a give and take. Then you can toggle on the ones that you need. You aren't penalized in terms of performance for the cameras that you're not using. Okay, then let's talk about GPU light mask. So introduced in Unreal Engine 4.2.6, this is where we use GPU rendering to facilitate baked rendering or GI and lighting. Traditionally, using just the CPU, there are definite time considerations. GPU light mask and GPU baking, therefore, really speeds things up. This benefits from multiple GPUs as well. Be shooting in minutes, not hours. And a few of the considerations is that you do see performance gains past 2 GPUs. There's a bake what you see mode. So if you are only concerned about what is going to be shown on camera, then you can basically cut a lot of calculations out and get there faster. Improvements to the UX, translucent shadow support, and a lot of other improvements as well. So in 4.2.6, we introduced the ability to do web remotes, but we've taken it a step farther. So here we have the ability to actually go in and choose which controls that you wanted to have published. There's a new web app with widgets that match to the Unreal Engine controls that you can then configure in a more drag and drop ability, allowing you to give all kinds of tactile control. It works with MIDI, it works with DMX. So here we have the DMX, or the MIDI console driving everything. We also have OSC control. So that allows you to build up some custom apps. And then things like the Stream Deck as well. All right, let's talk about DMX. So lots of improvements all around, but the star of the show really is the pixel mapping. So the ability to drive DMX in and out, very super cool. Pixel mapping unlocks some workflows that I'm going to talk about in a second when we talk about the traveling shots. But altogether, the workflow, solid, the performance, solid. Some of the other details about what's going on, so remote control integration, working with end-display and cluster rendering, and then of course the pixel mapping being the big one. Finally, traveling shots, and this is why I wanted to sort of say how things start to come together with these features. So all told, the improvements that facilitate the traveling shots are fundamentally, in the concept of it, simple. The impact of it, huge.
Zappa, you say, are Epic just stealing popular names, USD, DMX? Maybe, I don't know. I'm kind of confused by these names. I don't know if it's like proprietary names, like companies that they integrate, or it's actually their way of qualifying some of the features and some of the things. Right now, the other thing that I'm really not sure of is how do you go from having those shots that are high quality shots, and how do you mix that with Unreal? Like, we have seen some of the features within Unreal, we have seen some of the shots here, but like when does it merge together? Like how do you actually mix real life and virtual stuff? Yin should say USD was a pixel format. Oh, okay, so that's why when I looked online for USD visual production, it just talks about pixel graphics. Okay, so that's a format. So that's not from Epic. And I guess when you know about visual production or format for animation, maybe you know more about that. I'm a complete noob. Let's be honest. Okay, so USD is a format. And I think it's referred a lot online as a way of organizing a pipeline. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it actually forces you, as soon as you're using this format, it kind of implies that you're using a specific kind of framework to organize your work.
So here you can see an example of how things were shot on the test short that we did. And you can see that, we've got a cycling sort of cyclorama going in the background, and you can see how it works. And you can see the reflections on the windows. There's no green screen involved. There's no post-comp. It's all in camera. But now let's take a step back. Think about DMX. Think about the remote control. Notice in the clip when there's the actual crew member panning the light around. Imagine actually having that controlled by DMX and pixel mapping, so that when you have a white or a bright spot in your scene going by, that you could actually be triggering the lighting panels that could be next to the vehicle to add those extra lighting cues, all in sync with the background. Now let's think about the remote control. The fact that you could give the director or anybody on the set an actual iPad, laptop, physical device that would allow them to trigger cues. You want a lightning flash. You want to have an animated bird fly across and be reflected in the windscreen or in a window. You can do all that. And this is how all these things start to sort of come together, and why the component parts of 427 are themselves fantastic. The workflows that are unlocked when you combine them, is where the sort of the beauty and the smiles start to come out. So what did we do? It's really simple. Maybe not in implementation, but in concept. It simply comes down to this. When you were rendering that your background out of Unreal Engine in previous versions, you would be getting the calculated motion blur that Unreal was saying, was experiencing through its camera. That would then be multiplied by the motion blur that you would get from your physical camera. That meant that you got double motion blur, which, whether or not people could really sort of pick up what was going on, it didn't look quite right. So we've given you the ability to toggle off camera motion blur in your scenes, which means that the actual motion blur is derived by your physical camera, which then matches the physical actors and set pieces, in this case the vehicle. And so everything looks good. The other thing is we added 2D plate playback. Right now, uncompressed EXRs, so that you also have that as an option. All right. Now, none of this wouldn't matter if it didn't look right. So, we spent some time looking at the whole signal chain from Unreal Engine through signal processors to the LEDs to the camera. And using OpenColorIO, came up with a methodology for actually calibrating that process. So you can see how it's going to look from the viewpoint of the camera after it's gone through the full signal path. That can be utilized for artists who are preparing the content for the wall to understand what choices they need to make when they're creating the content, so you have less work to do on set, and it helps you with your on-set preview LUTs as well. Rod Bogart, our color expert that's been driving this work, he has a white paper that he'll be publishing, and we look forward to hearing back from you guys when you've read through this paper and have an ongoing dialogue with you about the color processes for in-camera visual effects and the workflows surrounding it.
I like how he kind of think that everyone is going to actually go read the red paper right after. Like, yeah, we have to read the white paper. I really like that. I think it's kind of cute. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to read that white paper. Also because I'm not a professional of movies and colors and everything else and cameras. But yeah, that's pretty nice that it gives the options though. Yinshu say the usage scenario he's showing is live playback of Unreal real-time scenes projected displayed on giant walls behind the foreground live action instead of green screen. Yes, and I think it's more and more used by professionals. I've actually seen some videos of people experimenting with Unreal, like professional filmographer. Especially, I was quite impressed when I was watching the other day a video from Corridor Crew. They have a YouTube channel, and it's pretty interesting. They are talking a lot about VFX. So the behind the scene, how they do things, they kind of launch themselves. Like they kind of have some challenges between themselves, and it's super interesting. And so one of them has been recently diving more and more into Unreal, and so he was explaining how he made lots of things just easier, especially when you have a small team. And so just like the example here, on its own, just having a green screen or virtual production, like you think, okay, that doesn't change much. But if you can actually just control everything from a tablet, or change the light in post-production, or like adding in real time some things, I think it also helps the actors that plays in the movies, but not only, also for the producer, for the director especially, they can just change things as they want in real time, and I think that's a big deal, really. Yinshina Corridor Crew, yeah. So Sam was doing the Unreal stuff, yes. And so it's funny because he started really diving into that, and over different challenges and different videos, he showed different aspects of using Unreal for VFX and for production, and every time I am so impressed by the results. And yes, they do have a lot of equipment, but more importantly, they know what they're doing. And when they, when you are trying some tools, you think, okay, I can learn this and that. But the way they are using the tools is very different. They know exactly what they want. And so because they have this more creative approach where they know exactly the end result they want, they are just finding mesmerizing to see how they just navigate to go so fast. Of course, it's videos, so it's it's for YouTube, it's usually staged and everything, but still it's very interesting to see that it's a very different way of using Unreal and everything else they are using, but that's also very interesting to see how they think in terms of tools. They are not just stuck into using one set of tools, but they see everything working together. So for them, it's more about understanding how everything works, and then being able to choose what makes more sense depending on the situation, depending on the budget, depending on the time, depending on the final results expected, depending on the hardware used. And I found this very interesting also to see when they experiment trying to just build something in a short amount of time. It's quite inspiring because you think, okay, I don't have very expensive machines or hardware, but I think what they do quite often is not that expensive, and so if you know how to use the tools correctly, you can actually end up with something pretty nice. Like sometimes they do things with with a camera from your phone, and that's end up just being pretty nice, just because they know the rest. Okay, let's continue the video then.
So we've talked about some of the core technologies. Let's talk about the stage operation features. And I think one of the ones that is the most popular right now for those that have tried it out in the preview releases is the end display configuration editor. So we heard you when you said that setting up end display wasn't always easy. It was error prone. It was text file based.
I have no idea what end display is.
You were working blind essentially.
Maybe I should have choose a workshop that is more entry level.
And figured out putting together a configuration editor that allows you to model out your screens, make sure that you have them all configured in spatially coherent way, get all the signals mapped to the right ones, and then finally.
Wait a minute, what did they just do? Like, that's pretty cool, just to have kind of a mirror effect, and the camera in front of it, that just when it's moved, it kind of moves the mirror behind. Like, even just that, I have no idea what they've done. Does anyone knows more than I do about Unreal, and just, or am I just such a noob that I am just amazed by that on its own, and I wish they just explain more how they did that? Yeah, I just think that I should have a better knowledge of Unreal for that.
Save a preset. So what can you do with that preset? You can then bring that into your other projects that are being used on stage. So instead of having to kind of drag dirty files forward that have been used from previous projects. You have a clean preset. You can drop that into your new project that matches, and then you have your new setup that matches your stage configuration, and you're all set to go, which is pretty awesome. On top of all this, we got into the details of lenses and cameras and all the subtleties that go into making the right image. So let's take a look at an example put together by our senior product manager, Andy Blondin. And so here's an example he set up at home, and you can see that he's mapped zoom and focus for a combination of camera and lens. He's been able to then take one of our CG assets and composite it live with the camera feed. And you can see that the racking of the zoom, the racking of the focus, it all stays in sync beautifully. And it is just crisp and coherent. It looks like it fits. This is big. So there's a lot of details to this.
It actually looks like you gave the direction, the control of the camera to an AI that just keeps trying out different angle and just going too close and being out of focus every few minutes. But yeah, that's actually pretty cool.
So firstly, it works in Composure, so you can do this for live comping. We take dynamic lens input. There's also encoder mapping, a new lens distortion asset. All the coefficients involved in this go together. Automatic overscan calculation, depth of field matching, nodal offset calibration, support for ST maps from Nuke if you're looking at this from a visual effects lens. And then the Cine camera works with the lens distortion. And we've also worked with all the tracking hardware manufacturers that can feed this lens data into Unreal so that you can have this driven live while on set. So then we get into things like this is the screenshot of a level snapshot workflow. The level snapshot feature is one that I think you will find incredibly valuable. So you have your level. It represents the world that you're trying to capture on stage or you're using in your content production. You then find yourself in scenarios where on a take-by-take basis, camera angle by camera angle basis, you might need to make modifications. But really, at the end of the day, it needs to stay that coherent level, that one piece that you art directed. Now, people in the past have taken physical notes, made Python pipeline tools, used sequencer, and many other sort of less than ideal compromises. So we heard about these challenges that you were facing, and the team came up with a great workflow. So the level snapshots allows you to basically save and restore the state of a given level after you've made modifications. So you can snapshot all the actors in the scene, you can filter which actors are being affected, which actors are being restored, and you can use filtering to do all this. You can add and remove new or deleted actors, and there's undo support. But fundamentally, at the end of the day, what this means is that you can maintain a clean level state, and you can make the alterations you need on a take-by-take basis. Those can be captured and logged. And then when you need to get back to a state for a pickup shot, it's as simple as restoring the level snapshot. All right, so for those of you who may not have had a chance to be involved in in-camera visual effects as much thus far, you might not be familiar with the multi-user workflow. So this is the workflow where through a common server-based connection, multiple Unreal sessions can basically be cataloging all the changes that each individual user is making through their session to the server, which then shares it to everybody else. So you can have multiple people working together. This is how we
That's not going to be my case at all. I don't know for you, but
all the various render nodes, how everybody that works
that's
in the
already a
frame
big
bar is
deal
sharing all
to be
the
on your
information
own.
to everybody else.
Having
and
other
how this
people
sort of,
into your project
collection of computers and people work together.
can be quickly be a
And
mess.
Unreal Engine 427, we really invested time in the overall stability. We also made sure that we had optimizations for sharing and creation of large assets in session. This is most often going to be things like your like bakes that you come out of GPU Lightmass with. So those need to be shared to the render nodes and shared amongst the users. Faster save times in session, smoother persist changes. Persisting is when you take the changes that you've been making in the multi-user session and actually bake them into the source-controlled version of that level that you're working with. And as you can see, the last two really important, robust take recorder support. So you can see on the screenshot on the right-hand side there, that you have the ability to target which machine in your multi-user cluster is recording which piece of data, and things like simulations being run on in-display, other sessions being captured on different machines. You can kind of disseminate which machine does what, so it's a much more powerful workflow. Level visibility support with in-display and editor means that you can do things like keep different lighting scenarios as sub-levels, sequences or sub-levels, and then that will allow you to then toggle between different states. So between those two last things there, quite new and powerful workflows are unlocked. So let's talk about the pipeline enhancements real quickly. First and foremost, USD. And it breaks down into three things: the importing of USD data, the exporting of Unreal data to USD, and then working with USD data in a clean and transparent way inside of Unreal. All right, so quickly, importing geometry, geometry caches, materials, skeletons, animations, blend shapes, lights, and cameras. But what does it really mean? How does it look? So here we have the USD kitchen with a couple of our actors in here. You can then load it and import it into as the USD stage actor and import that. So it's no longer USD data, it's now Unreal data. And you basically can point it to a location in your content browser, and then this imports every asset in all the various levels into Unreal. So you can now work with it natively using the full suite of Unreal tools. Export. Geometry, LODs, vertex colors, material assignments, animation, levels and sublevels, landscapes, foliage, and baked textures. Mouthful. Okay, so what does this really boil down to? So here we have the meerkat scene, and what we're going to do is export it, the level, as a USD file. So you can see we've picked it out, it's baking down the texture maps, and then the result is that you end up with a USD file that represents your level. But also take note that all your U assets are converted into USD assets as well. So you have those well defined on top of everything else. And because we bake out the textures and the texture assignments, you can load it into a tool like Maya, and you've got everything that you saw inside of Unreal.
Question: does anyone know the benefits of using USD assets? Simply because here we're talking about importing, so I understand if you're creating something in Maya, for example, you want to use it in Unreal, and so you're going to import a USD asset. But then I'm not sure to get, why would I choose USD over a different format? So far, when I've been using asset in Unity or Unreal or any 3D asset, I think I've seen a lot of OBJ and FBX formats, and I haven't really come across any USD. So I'm wondering what's the benefit and what's the difference in terms of asset. Is it very different assets? Does anyone know about that? Roy, does this mean that they can take an image and render it into a vector space? Well, that's a good question. I think it has to really be vector. Yinshu say the new formats are USD and GLTF. Oh crap! You add another one. They are more open and stable. So when you say the new formats, is it going to slowly replace the old formats? I think the good thing right now, I don't know if it's a good thing though, but with all these tools that kind of accept a very wide variety of formats, you don't really think about that. You know, you get your asset and you don't really think about the kind of format it is. As soon as it's compatible, you know, you do a quick Google research, can this tool take this in, and if it says yes, that's good. But I think that lots of people are using tools like me. I do that too, where you don't really know exactly what kind of format this is and what it really means. Like, is there any limitation? Why should you go for this format or this format? personally, what I do is I like to work with existing asset. So I am terrible at starting something creative, an asset or anything from scratch. So what I do is I usually take some free assets because there are many of them available today, and I try to work from there to learn how to use the tool and modify it so I make it my own, but starting from a base, right, from a foundation. But then that means that I don't really think about the type of format as soon as it's compatible with the tools I'm planning to use with that, which is a shame because I feel that if you really want to understand the tool and master it, you need to understand exactly what the formats are for. You should say lots of the older formats are not very standard and cause many import-export problems. They were organically designed and internally have version issues. Okay? I'm not surprised by that at all. Also, some formats are proprietary, which only work with one software. Yes, I've seen that, and I think it's a shame today. I mean, no one uses just one tool, so you have to have some compatibility. But okay, that's very interesting to see. I'll keep an eye for these new formats, and I'm going to put some notes to do some additional research on USD and GLTF formats. Yinshu says the new formats work across more new platforms. Okay, that's good to know. I'm wondering if people have already picked this up. As I said, I spend a lot of time just looking for assets, for new assets. When I start getting into a new tool, and I haven't seen much of this. Maybe I didn't look for it because I didn't know what it was, but I'm wondering if people are really picking this up quickly. How does this work? Do they just recreate the same assets and put it in the different stores, just to replace the older one, or additionally where you can have different choices for assets? I'm not sure about that.
Ready to go.
Ready to
On
go.
the landscape and foliage side, things to note. We use height maps in this case for this particular landscape, so there's no representation of a height field in USD yet, which means that we bake it down to a piece of geometry, which can get massive. So be careful about your settings when you're baking down the landscapes. But you can see that in the end, you can load this into tools like Maya or Solaris that have USD support, and you have all your geometry, your scattering is there, and you have your landscape ready to go. So working with USD instead of Unreal, you can interact with all USD assets. You can change transforms, visibility, properties, purpose, things like that. You can animate the transforms. You can edit the layers. You should note that there's runtime support. So this isn't behind the scenes in memory. It's converting things to U assets so that it works through Unreal, but it's still referencing a USD file. So next time you load this up, you have different changes made to your USD file that will come through. There's also the asset cache, which just helps with the acceleration of loading the scene the next time around. But what does this look like? So here we have a USD shot configuration, and we can load that into Unreal. It comes in as what we call the USD stage actor, which then allows you to have full access to all the USD data. You can see all the layers that are here in the setup. You can do things like add and subtract objects, change their properties. In this case, we're going to add an extra layer that we want to make an edit for this chair with. And then you can see that it's there, the file's ready, we can make the edit, we can save that edit, and then you'll see in the USD file is that override that you just made. Pretty cool. Okay, so what are some of the technical details that come in to this? It's based on currently on USD 2105. We'll roll up as we each version, but if you want to use a specific USD version, you can do so. You have access to the Unreal Engine source code. You just need to download it and compile it. It's not easy, but it is doable. We have the full Python API support with focus on Python 3.7.7, the runtime support, like I said, but what that actually, second implication or detail that's worth noting is that you can compile a game application that uses the USD, and because of this runtime support, you could feed that game application USD files, and so you can make yourself something like a USD viewer or a review tool. The asset cache just helps with the acceleration of loading, and there's Windows, Mac, and Linux support as well. Here we have our friendly Meerkat, and some of you who have experimented with hair and Alembic caches know that the workflow wasn't always easy. It would work. There's sometimes limitations and sometimes accuracy problems. So we've taken steps to solve that. Really what it comes down to is now an easy workflow to import Alembic caches and grooms and align them. And then it comes down to the way that those caches are then read. So there's improved motion blur support, improved support for non-consistent topology, and improved support for caches that start with no topology whatsoever and pick that up in subsequent frames. All right, movie render queue. If we break this down into the highlights, really what it comes down to is that with the Python scripting, you can do more robust workflows for your pipeline. You have the mask ID support, and then two of the big things, built-in overscan support. This has got many cheers from the internet. And then shouldn't be missed that you also have support for the lens distortion tools that we talked about earlier. Updated iOS apps. So VCam is going to have a dedicated app. Live Link Face, in terms of UX, is going to have an iPad version so that you're not just basically looking at a scaled up iPhone version. But the real star of the show is the fact that you can now calibrate a rest pose. So your actor can, you can basically derive better facial animation on a per actor basis. And then the calibrated signal is sent to Unreal through the streaming, but the actual device can capture the uncalibrated and calibrated signal as well. So if you want to
great, something just for the iPhone
finally,
users.
all these can be triggered by OC. So if you have multiple actors on a stage through a motion capture performance, you don't have to run around and go to everybody's phone or try and get them all to do it at the same time. You can just do it once yourself. That's it, guys. I mean, there is more to 4.2.7, but this is what we had the time to tell you about, and this is really the meaty part when it comes to virtual production.
Okay, so
and we really hope you
can
keep
we just
giving us your
dive
feedback,
in
whether it's
now?
the Facebook group, whether it's
it's an hour
forums,
talk,
however
so
you can. Keep the feedback coming, because it is that helps us, inspire sort of solutions to your problems. And also, when you have the opportunity, once this pandemic is sort of starting to sort of wane, please let us know. We'd love to come see you in action. We'd love to see what's going on in your stage, what's going on in your studio, and help you build a better future with a real-time workflow in Unreal Engine. But with that, wherever you are, I hope you are happy, healthy, and safe, and we'll see you next time.
Today we have a few.
Okay, so apparently they just follow with the directly with the panel. I have no idea. I haven't watched the video at all before, so I guess the first part may be about the new features of the new version of Unreal, and then I have no idea what they're going to cover after that, because now, like, so far it felt like it has been a lot of like new features and covering and okay, what you can do now you couldn't do before, which is interesting, but I want to see real life example and things that we can actually apply right now. Like, I don't feel that so far what we've seen is applicable for smaller creators or just normal people who don't have access to big sets and are not trying to create a movie or anything. So let's see. Talking about the formats, you say the 3D model ecosystem is highly complicated with a very imperfect data flows between different tools. Yeah, I've noticed that. I'm trying to have some experimentation, including failed experimentation. Yes. Software can import but not export some formats. Yeah, some exports with separate texture files, some have them embed. FBX is still very common and popular, but has some legacy issues. USD is not just a 3D file format. It appears to be able to work as a scene format that refers to other files external to itself. I see. So that makes completely sense, that then it's integrated directly into Unreal, looking that you are definitely looking at a scene and trying to move things and work with things, different elements of your scene itself. So that makes sense. Let's see what they have to say. I have no idea if the panel is actually going to be useful or not. I was hoping to have some kind of, example of virtual sets, and more importantly, not just for movies, but also experimentation that we could actually reproduce, or things we can do with a green screen to mix together real life and virtual production. But something that is not at the scale of a movie shooting.
My colleagues joining us to go through some of the questions that came over the chat and have a bit of a discussion about.
Okay, so that should be more interesting, because that's really about answering the questions.
Ryan and Sivan from the product team, and I guess I can let you guys kind of run through and introduce yourselves and let everybody know a bit about what you're working on.
I'll jump in, and so Andy Blondin, we're all product managers here at Epic Games, me, myself, Ryan, and Sivan, and so we handle a lot of the tools that Jordan is describing there. So yeah, happy to kind of jump into the QA and answer a bunch of you guys' questions.
I guess Ryan, you could hop in next.
Sure, I'll go next. I'm Ryan. I'm also one of the product managers. I spend a lot of time on a lot of our stage tools, camera VFX, and I work really closely with Sivan on in-display. Yeah, looking forward to answering some questions.
So I'm Sivan. I'm also a product designer, specifically for live events. Since we do share a lot of similarities with visual production, I work very closely with my friends Ryan and Andy.
Great. So lots of questions came in fast and furious in the very beginning about hardware and GPUs and basic setup of the kind of kit that you need to start doing virtual production. So on the hardware question, a lot of them really are floating around like, do I need Quadro-based cards? What's up with sync? So maybe Andy and you guys, Ryan and Sivan, can just elaborate a bit on why and where you need your hardware.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the long and short of it is, if you're using the in-display technology and you're doing clustered rendering, you do need Quadro-based solutions. So the NVIDIA Quadro cards, if you're doing some of the multi-GPU that Jordan had shown off, you need the NVLink as well to go along with support for the multi-GPUs. And so, kind of speccing out that system, there's obviously a lot of different kind of options. But, here at Epic, we've been running on the Nance stage, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Ryan, but it's been the A6000s with multi-GPUs. And all throughout that production test shoot, we were running that kind of hardware specifically on stage. Should chime in more.
Yeah, the sync aspect of the Quadros is what it takes to sort of align the way the camera.
What about if you don't have that much money to buy these graphic cards?
The 3090s, etc. For the artist workstations.
That's pretty expensive.
And you can also have like a mix of those machines like in the multi-user session. So sometimes we'll have other machines that are just doing the art prep or making modifications of the scene live that then are sort of transacted over to the LED wall. So the machines that the artists are using don't have to necessarily be Quadros. As long as they can run the scene that you're modifying, you don't need to have Quadros for every single one. But for the machines that are driving the rendering that needs to be synchronized, then you do need the Quadro sync.
This is correct. So you will need Quadro for the display facing and display PCs. For the rest, it doesn't really matter. My rule of thumb as recommendation is try to stick with the most high-end, most professional grade gear and hardware. Sometimes consumer grade might not be your best choice, and sometimes they don't even have the necessary chips. For instance, on the Quadro card, you have specific chips for sync, which you don't have on consumer grade hardware. So you just won't be able to have perfect display sync across your displays.
Talking about graphic cards, also something that may be taken into consideration today in the light that it's very difficult right now to have access to consumer graphic cards, just because the prices is rising and there is really limited availabilities depending on the country. Also, like in the UK, it has been kind of difficult to just get your hands into on a graphic card that is rather modern and not crazy expensive for what it is. Like prices have been really on the rise recently, and I think there is a new wave of price raising coming. So definitely tricky. And for what I understand, not the pro of graphic cards, I think maybe Metamurai on the chat may confirm or not, but I think actually if you have the budget to buy a professional graphic card, you may find it easier to get access to that because the difficulty to access the hardware is more on the consumer part, while the professional equipment is more expensive, so it's not for everyone, but it may be slightly easier to access. But then you need the money. So I wish I could upgrade to some professional stuff, but still stuck on the consumer hardware for now. Does anyone has a Quadro or something a bit more like on the professional GAM, or how do you say GAM in English? Category, just category.
Awesome. Great answers. So another question, kind of hardware related, is about LED and the actual display technology, and what recommendations are, or what are the, what comes to pitch for the LED panels. Like, what are you guys looking for? And I know this is a bit of an open-ended question, so I'll let you kind of both have a go on it.
I'll kind of try to tackle the one first, and then you guys can add. But like, when it comes to pixel pitch, there is no necessarily magic number, but the thing that you need to think about is similar to like, how close, retina, like how close can I get to the screen without seeing the pixels? So you have to remember that when you're shooting through the film camera, the larger the pixel pitch, then the more chance of moire pattern that you're going to see is. So the smaller the pixel pitch, in theory, the better off you are. But it really comes down to the size of the volume and the cost that, for going very low pixel pitch, like I think I said in the previous webinar, it can go down to like 0.8 pixel pitch if you're willing to spend that money, and you can get very close to that wall, but at the same time, it's going to cost you a fortune. So it's really a balance. And we've seen on productions, the first Mandalorian used 2.8. We've seen some down to 2. It kind of depends on, that quality. Another thing that people don't factor in as much is that the cameras also, like high-end cinema cameras, have a low pass filter as well that helps aid some of those moire artifacts that you see. And so you can actually kind of get a decent amount closer when some of that is in place versus kind of the lower end kind of prosumer type cameras. But there's some general rules of thumb, I would say, to follow, as far as shooting distance from the wall. I don't think we really shoot closer than 12 feet to the wall, I would say. You need to leave some distance in the same way that you would for green screen to be able to get the proper amount of depth of field. And obviously you don't want to focus on the focal plane of where the LEDs are. So you need to kind of focus beyond or in front. But yeah, those are the general like rules of thumb, but there isn't like this is going to work for each production. Well, I guess the other thing I should mention too is that, if you're building a wall, kind of the angle at which you're shooting as well is important. So you'll see the most artifacts when you have glancing angles. So, you have to kind of keep that in mind as well, especially like the ceiling product. A lot of times we mix and match the kind of shooting surface, and then the ceiling product could be a smaller pixel pitch, for example, because we're not shooting on that as much.
Excellent. So this question actually kind of ties the last two together, and they're asking about multi-camera shooting and how is that even a thing. So I guess Ryan, maybe you could talk about that a bit.
Yeah, so multi-camera shooting is something that's been possible in display for a while. There are some improvements that Jordan touched on in in the presentation that just have to do with like how you set it up. So in a nutshell, in N-Display you'll define like, you know, this n number of cameras, which can be more than one, and then you'll choose to enable or disable however many you want to currently be shooting with. Each one of those is like a totally, you know, separate, unique camera, and so we would expect them to both be driven by live camera tracking. They'll have different focal, you know, all of the focus, iris, zoom, etc. will be specific to each camera, and then we will render an inner frustum for each separately. So each one will get a, you know, the picture-in-picture moving frustum that shows the right perspective, and then you can also set an order. So like if they happen to cross, you will choose that one, you know, wins over the other.
Mhm.
Excellent. So another question, this is an interesting one. What, and probably very open-ended, what's a typical crew size added on with virtual production? So if you've already got a stage up and running.
That's
you
an
know,
interesting
you've got your
question. I think it's
clerks and
actually
whatever.
decreased the number
What's
of people
the additional
in
crew
some
to run the virtual
situation.
production aspect of it.
I mean, in our experience, that can really vary. Like some productions are run really lean, and some like have more crew. I think as a like I guess like maybe just using our own example, like as a like our own shoot, like the production test stuff that we've released. You know, on the kind of you know, sitting at the computer aspect of it, you've got, you know, typically one person that's like making sure that the camera tracking is working. And then we usually have like two Unreal operators. So one person that's a little bit more operations focused, right? They're making sure that takes are getting recorded, that stages aligned, and things are technically working. And then you may have another person that's like more focused on artistic changes. So, you know, the filmmakers are able to change stuff live through remote control, but there's sometimes where it's like, oh, they really want to get in and change the lighting or do something that you really need to be on Unreal for. That's something that like it's more of an artist focused person that's like sort of ready to make any of those changes. We've seen other productions where they're much heavier on making artistic changes live, so they may have more of those people. We've seen other productions where like the operator that's doing the technical stuff is also doing the artistic changes. So a lot of the times it depends on like the personnel for the project itself, like, you know, how much of that stuff is making sense for the production that you're doing. But that's like the basic rule of thumb that we have done on our previous shoots.
Okay, awesome. So here's a question. Someone's asking about camera calibration, any documentation. So maybe Andy or Sivan can jump in there and talk about that was newly added lens distortion.
Yeah,
and things like
so
that.
that's newly added in 427. We have a good documentation page. Someone, I guess I'll post it in the chat here in a second, but I don't have it right on hand. But I know right where it is, so I'll post. But yeah, there's kind of 4 sections. There's a brand new suite of tools that allows you to get the camera feed in. We use OpenCV to calibrate the distortion value, so we can also use that same checkerboard to calculate the nodal offset position of the camera. You can do that across the zoom and the focus. You can do your encoder mapping for it so that it blends with, you know, as you zoom. We also have the ability to, you know, pre-calculate some of that stuff, shoot grids, calculate them in Nuke, and bring those ST maps in for a VFX style workflow, along with, you know, being able to read the dynamic data from all the camera vendors. So from Stipe, Moses, NCAM to drive those distortion values now. So yeah, the whole new suite of tools, they're going in, you know, this release as like a first pass as experimental, but we're going to kind of keep evolving that probably for several releases to come. And the last thing I'll mention is we've put in a system for Aruco markers and pattern matching, so you can display that on your LED wall and then kind of calculate where those are in 3D space in reference to the tracking system. So placing those 3D meshes kind of get a little easier or simpler based on that. So yeah, a whole suite of tools have kind of come in, and I'll post the docs in the chat.
Yeah, and I think
Okay.
it's nice to see that it's trying to take already existing kind of VFX workflows and then apply them into the stage. So things like OpenColor.io, I know, has had some work done in 427 also, and I think it's going to continue to kind of grow and evolve. You guys might have a bit more insight into that than I do, but it's definitely there and moving forward. So another question that people are asking, this came up in the first webinar also, was
Yes,
so the
Jens.
427 virtual production features push into UE5, and sort of where does this stuff go next?
You're completely right, Yinch. This workshop definitely seems to be more for TV and like studio production. I was expecting, to be honest, some example of things that are more accessible for people and something that are easier to reproduce, not just talking about professional hardware or people who are already specialized in production, like production professionals. So I don't know. I'm really hoping that maybe later on, like right now, the Q&A is a bit long. Let's see.
So I think
maybe we can jump a bit.
I think I'll just say quickly that I think it's quite obvious that UE5 is in Unreal 5.
Because also we don't need to be convinced that Unreal is pretty cool to do virtual production. I mean, Unreal is cool, we know that.
This might be a good question for Ryan. They're asking about the NAT stage and
ultimately
What we do with that is have those items replicate both in the editor, and maybe you want that system to have, the director or the DP to have a iPad to be able to control stuff on a touch interface and have those work seamlessly together. Like that's some of the goal.
I also don't have preview. If I look at a bit further ahead, it would be good to see them like showing the screen and show us like how it works really for small experimentation.
It's quite as much as possible pinpoints in
the different states of your scene without having to like duplicate a level, and just orchestrate these things a lot easier.
Life.
I'm sorry, it's super annoying when people are
opt into our communications
jumping in the videos, but I'm just trying to get out of this Q&A that is really very specific and precise, and big questions from people who are already working on production.
Stage here that's going to be an LED virtual production facility in this location. Those pop in my feed a lot, and then just random, something like Matt Workman or Corey, their stuff's always, I'm always getting this feed of people showing interesting, exciting things, and the community is really sharing. I think that's the thing reminds me of the early days of 3D, like when everyone was just trying to figure it out and, sharing knowledge.
3D, isn't it the thing that actually died? I know that's a bit controversial, because I remember when I was working in virtual reality, I remember so many people making jokes about that, about 3D TVs and 3D movies in cinema. I mean, has anyone seen any big movie, like 3D movie, in the cinema recently? And even before COVID, I'm not talking about, since COVID, because there has been less release in theaters, but even pre-COVID, when was the last 3D movie you went to see at the cinema? I can't remember, to be honest, but for sure I haven't been going to a cinema to watch a 3D movie in the UK, and I have been here for more than 5 years. So I would say it's been at least 6-7 years, maybe more than that. And so when I was working in virtual reality and talking about the potential to have headset in your home and the different type of experiences, I remember some people being skeptical, and these people usually mention 3D movies and 3D TVs because it was a flop. There has been lots of commercials and lots of 3D TVs on the market for consumer, and it didn't really work out. Does anyone knows anyone who actually bought a 3D TV for their home? Yin, you say you watched a Doctor Who movie in 3D. Okay. So yeah, that was actually quite some time ago already. You did? Yinch, you did bought a 3D TV. Okay. That's cool. So do you still use the 3D features? Because you're a nerd, so I understand why you bought it, I know you. I think you want to try out everything. You also got a 3D monitor. No way! I didn't even know that was a thing. Still, you could buy a 3D monitor today. Yinchu say there's no compelling content for it. Exactly. And that's exactly why so many people who were skeptical about virtual reality a few years ago were taking this as an example also. They didn't really put it this way, but I think in their head that would really happen in the fact that you need a new piece of hardware to experience a new type of content. But then if there is not enough content, how can you justify the cost of the equipment? Now, for virtual reality, it's slightly different because you have a lot of content that is created by independent, so you actually do have a lot of content, and lots of the problem is discoverability. But in terms of 3D movies, I think they kind of just stopped doing them. I mean, I don't remember when was the last time I even saw the 3D glasses somewhere. Well, actually, I do, because I've seen some on Gumtree this week, but I mean, people using them. Ian, you say you have 3D glasses that work with your projector. Oh, that must be pretty cool. You saw Terminator 2 in 3D, and the only bits that were worth it were the machine was seen in the beginning. Otherwise, the eye strain is not worth it. That's exactly the problem. And I think also the problem when we had lots of 3D movies was that you could tell if this scene was specifically made for the 3D. And so it kind of breaks the engagement in the movie. You know, you're like in the cinema, you're watching your movie, and suddenly you realize that this scene is just because you can watch this movie in 3D, and that's about it. And it doesn't bring anything to the story or anything. It's a bit like today you have some movies that do that when it comes to the trailers, and so you can tell when you're watching the movie that this scene is right here, and like that's the big deal of the movie, and they kind of created it thinking already that that will be part of the trailer. I don't know if that's how it worked out or if it's just too obvious, but yeah, that could be a problem. Yinchu said the problem with 3D TV is that it didn't add much more immersion over well-made 2D scenes. That's correct, yes. And most of the time, if it was actually poorly made, it gives you this kind of headache, and that's a big downside. I remember in watching some movies, and so before the movies you have the ads in the cinema, and sometimes the ads were better in terms of 3D than the movie itself, and so you're like so hype at the beginning, you're wearing your glasses and you have this super cool ads. And I remember this specific ads with, I think it was M&M's, and they were like coming at you, and it was pretty cool. And then the movie is rather flat, and you're like, okay, that didn't make sense. Yinchu say, in defense of VR, the immersion is substantially greater than 2D TV. Yes, I agree. And the room for interactivity, and if you add tracking, I mean, just virtual reality as 360 videos, for example, it's still flat. So you have immersion, but you sometimes have some things that breaks your immersion. I'm thinking, for example, I have tried sometimes some documentaries that were very interesting and well made in 360 movies. And something that always bothers me is that I am short. I am very short. I am 1.50 m, which is less than a 5 in its inch. I don't know. Less than a 5 in the UK. And so when the 360 movie is recorded from quite often a high point of view. So usually it's a guy that wears a backpack with the camera on the top, and so the problem with that is you're very, very high, and for me it's a deal breaker, because even if it's really well made, I'm like, that doesn't make sense. What am I doing that far high? I'm usually so close to the ground. That just doesn't work out. But then with virtual reality, it's completely different, especially if you add tracking and if you have a headset with a tracking, then you can really feel like you are part of the scene itself. So completely agree with you. Roy, you say Dread previously, Dread 3D used 3D well. Okay, I don't know about that. I don't know about this movie. I don't think of 360 videos as true VR since it's usually monoscopic. I agree with that, but that's not the case for most people. They kind of mix together 360 and VR because you put a headset on, and as soon as you put a headset on, for lots of people, that's you're doing VR. Good VR is interactive and stereoscopic. That's correct, yes. But you know, that's where you see the gap between a technology and, you know, whatever how cool it is, you still have to convince the mass audience to adopt it. And so I have seen that in virtual reality, but also in blockchain, where when you're involved in the community and in the space, especially early on, you have the way of using the right words and explaining, like, you know, having a very clear definition of what is what. And then you also, in the same time, want the mass market to adopt it. But in the same time, when they do start getting into it, they kind of messed up the words. So they create new words that don't necessarily mean anything or doesn't necessarily refer to the right thing. Like, for example, MR. Are still people using MR in virtual reality to talk about mixed reality? For a while, when I was involved in this space, mixed reality was when you were using a green screen and a VR experience and putting someone, a real life person, into a virtual reality experience and showing it on a screen with the green screen and adding the person to it, and this kind of things, like having a green screen was mixed reality. But then, I don't know from where, mixed reality became just augmented reality plus virtual reality, not necessarily together, but just the two industries, and a way of referring to a different reality with added content, whether you are immersed in it or the content comes to you, to your life. And so it was very weird, but I've seen exactly the same in blockchain. I don't have exactly an example coming to mind right now, but it has been the same in the sense that initially you had clear words for clear things, and then it comes to the attention to more people, and you have suddenly a large amount of people coming in, and when this happens, there is a lot of things that actually change. Good thing or not, I don't know. I think it's kind of part of the cycle of adoption of the technology. You have some people who don't know what they're talking about. You have some people who know what they're talking about, but they want to simplify it for adoption. And you have people who don't care about the tech. And I think there are lots of technology that when they are massively adopted, we're reaching out the point where no one cares about what you call what. You know, you just want to use this. Like, when people are using Snapchat filters or Instagram filters or whatever, no one says, oh, wait, I'm using augmented reality. When people play Pokemon Go, no one says, I'm going to use my augmented reality app. Like, no one cares how you call it. They just want to play a cool game and they like the features, and that's it. And that's kind of part of the massive adoption in some way, which can be very hard when you are part of the industry. And it can be frustrating, but I think it's actually a good sign. That means that people are taking this technology and making it theirs, you know, putting their own word on it. Ian, she said, the labeling around VR has been a nightmare. They are now proposing XR to combine AR and VR. Yeah, I've seen XR. Right, I've seen that, and I don't know what this means. X for what? X for experience? Experience reality doesn't mean anything. Yeah, that's really weird. The key to mass adoption is when the tech becomes invisible, and it's just about the content. Invisible tech is how you know something has matured. Exactly, yes. So it can be harsh though when you're working in the industry for years, and but in the same time, that's good sign for your business. I mean, even right now, I'm working in artificial intelligence, and well, I don't have all the vocabulary, and sometimes I think I tend to take shortcuts to make sure that people understand what I'm talking about. So I'm kind of the buffer that translate the technical and very technical things into things that are easier to understand. But because I'm not a machine learning research scientist like my co-founder, I don't necessarily use the right word or the right way of explaining things, but I try to actually just simplify. But if you add many like me in the between, you end up with something that may not be that accurate. But if people understand it, then is it really that bad? I think my co-founder would be heartbroken. It would be hard for him, harder for him than for me. For me, it's more about adoption and people getting it. So I don't mind if people, re-explain what we do in their own words, because that means that they get it, right? And I actually like that. But then in terms of accuracy, that's always, finding the right balance when you're working on deep tech or just something very new. X is for extended. Okay, XR, extended reality. That still doesn't mean much. Talking about augmented reality, it's Reben and someone collaboration that actually announced a new AR glasses. Who's that already? I can't remember the name. Let's check this out. Facebook. It's yes, Yinch, you got it faster than I did. Ray-Ban and Facebook, they announced their new smart glasses, which is funny because you have the Snap glasses, the Snapshot glasses, and the new version that is actually really weird, really big, and so I would have thought that maybe Facebook would have come not as Facebook but as Instagram, to face directly Snap, but I haven't read really much about it. I just saw the news and I thought that that's interesting because some people are still working on that, so it's still coming one day. Yin should say there's no AR display at all, it's just camera glasses. Oh really? Oh, that's crap then. It's just Ray-Ban glasses with camera on it. Then that's a shame. I was expecting, augmented reality like we've seen in not in movies necessarily, but in a lot of demo, a bit like the Google Glass, but with the connecting screen and a display and additional information. That's what people would expect from AR glasses. If you can just record what's around you, I think it raises lots of questions on privacy, and just I find it weird. Like imagine if I always had my phone like that and filming everyone. I know people are more used to that today, but I just don't see the point. I like to see what I'm recording when I'm recording something. So I'm not a huge fan of this kind of glasses that just record stuff. If you don't add anything that you can actually create, that I don't really see the point. Yin should say, this camera feature on Google Glass was how it got cancelled previously. Yeah, it's funny how things evolved, right? I think the Google Glass were so early, and if they were to launch today, they wouldn't necessarily be the flop that we've seen before. simply because, yeah, they were actually quite interesting. These Google glasses did have an AR display, not spatial, just a flat display. Yeah, but still, you know, that was still additional content. So you can justify the cost of buying AR glasses if you can have augmented reality on it. If you don't have anything, if it's just recording, then it's just a camera. So that would be the same as having just a GoPro strapped to you, like some people do. Some content creators do that. They actually strap themselves with a GoPro, and that's it. They can do some pretty good thing with that. So I don't know. I'm still struggling to find the way of using that. Maybe I'm not the right target audience. Maybe the youngest generation would be more for that, you know, to record some experiences, to record real life. I don't know. Yin should say, these new Ray-Bans have only brought back the bad feature of Google Glass. Yes. What I hope with that, though, is the miniaturization. I really hope that just by miniaturizing, making cameras very, very small, maybe can lead to then develop additional features and maybe bring us to real augmented reality within glasses, because that was the very expensive part, making things so small that it actually fits into just a simple pair of glasses. So if we can already have as a first step normal glasses that have cameras on it, then maybe this will just bring us closer to the next step and having more than just cameras. Or maybe I'm just too optimistic and then we just have all cameras to our face all the time and that's about it. Yin should say the components have really shrunk a lot. The bottleneck is power. Yes, correct. Yeah. Better batteries, smaller and better, yeah, and heat and weight. Yes, right. When I'm talking about making everything smaller, I mean with the same capabilities, right? So that's difficulty, and you know, talking about heat and weight, I think virtual reality has come a long way on that. I remember buying my Samsung S7 because back then for virtual reality it was really good for headset with phones, and I remember like organizing some experiences with lots of people in the same room with lots of headset together, and so we had to charge the phone every we were showing an experience of 15-20 minutes. So at the end we had to charge the phones every time they were burning. Like we had to find ways to cool them down, and just so many times I've tried VR experiences and just had to put it down because it was so hot in there. So I think it has come a long way, and lots of improvement have been made when it comes to that. Okay, should we try to move a bit in the video and see if we have something else than just these guys talking together about very technical stuff, but for studios? Oh, I don't think so. No, we don't. That's a shame. I was really hoping that this workshop, how did they call it initially? When I registered, it was webinar, the next step in virtual production. And so I was really expecting explanation on virtual productions themselves, how to get started, to be honest, with Unreal and virtual production, what we can do with that. And yeah, unfortunately it was more focused on the big players like Hollywood movies, and they mentioned The Mandalorian that has been using some virtual production setup, and there's some very interesting videos about that. So yeah, it can be interesting for people who are into that, but The accurate title of the workshop, showing off things you won't have a budget to use. Yes, so it's good if you're already a professional in production and working for professional studios and everything. But yeah, for just normal people, that wasn't maybe the best. Maybe I can find another one. You know, if that's a format that's interesting, maybe I can find something that is slightly more practical. I'm sure there are some of them because I was just Googling the webinar just to find the link earlier. And yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of them, or maybe one that is not by Unreal, because also I feel that for this webinar, Unreal used that to showcase the new version, the new Unreal, and so it's cool, but yeah, it's not really practical. So maybe next time we can find that. Let me show you what I've done. I have created something very simple with Unreal. I have opened it. Let me see if it works here. I've done some preparation, as you can see. Not sure if everything is going to work fine, but so far we haven't had any issue, and I'm pretty happy about that. You know, live streaming technology is sometimes it's a bit difficult. Let's see. Perfect. It works. So here you can see my screen and my project. Okay, I can't extend it here. Maybe I can. Yeah, I can extend it here. What if I make it bigger like that? Does it make it bigger for you? No, that doesn't. Oh yes, it does. Good. Zappa, and of course it has a sofa. Of course it does. Okay, so let me show you that. I'm going to play it, and maybe okay, we're going to start from the beginning. So okay, so a bit futuristic, kind of an old building, not an old building, a futuristic dystopian future, sci-fi, whatever keyword or hashtag you want to put in there. So I've created this entire environment, not on my own. I started with some presets, some existing assets that I modified. It was very sci-fi. Like I think it's initially a kind of a module, a space module or something like that, and I've made it something more industrial with some lights and everything. But to be honest, I just don't know what to do with that. So there is a couch, because I thought that would be cool to have a couch. And yeah, there's always a couch. And then also I thought on the outside it would be so nice. So initially there weren't any windows, so I had to find a different asset where I took the windows only. And so you can't really see it here with this kind of lighting because it's quite dark. But that's like big windows that got into the ceiling, and so I had to remove part of the walls. I kind of had to redo everything to make it more industrial and more open. And I thought, okay, what if outside we could see buildings? So initially I wanted to have like a dark night sky, and that's when things started to get ugly. I broke the entire project. I had to work directly into the files because that's what I should have done initially. And then I thought, let's put some old, like destroyed building or yeah, just to add to the environment. And then I took a step back and was like, that's pretty cool, but what do I do with that? Like, how do I make that into a virtual production? How can I use that? Can I really have like AMAs in there? I don't think so. I don't know. I just found it cool to build, but then I don't know if I should just start from scratch, something different. Like creatively, I feel kind of stuck because I don't really know what I want to do with that. And I think that has been the problem. It was a nice experiment to learn how to use Unreal, to get started with Unreal, because that was the first time I used Unreal. I used Unity a few times in the past, but first time for me with Unreal. So it was kind of nice to see how lights work, the common problem I can come across and these kind of things. But then in terms of practicality, because I don't know exactly what I want to do with that, I just haven't touched it for months. Roy, you say it seems sometimes that people can be more excited for new technology to do existing things as opposed to genuinely new things. Example, cryptocurrencies being used to pay for stuff as opposed to the possibilities of smart contract. Yeah, well, I think for this example, it's also that buying things is something everyone can understand, while smart contracts, you need to understand some concepts that are slightly harder for some people. I remember when I was working in blockchain, I was trying to explain to my family blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and it was pretty difficult. And something that someone from my family said that really struck me was, but how can you have money that you can't touch? And I'm like, well, the banking system works this way. You don't really touch the money in the bank. You have your bank account and you're not using all your money in cash, and no one keeps your money in cash. But I still think that it's can be difficult for people to understand. And so, yeah, I think people need to keep things simple. But yeah, I agree. The fact that there's also cryptocurrencies, the currency word, can be difficult. Yin should say it's very dramatic for it's a very dramatic environment. Yeah, it is. Maybe a bit too much. We don't have a dramatic channel, right? Roy, IMA with avatars. Maybe. But then I'm not going to get my guests to create an avatar and to set up a virtual avatar system entirely. So, no. If it was me adding an avatar on the top of them, that would be also too much work every time. So if I replace just myself with an avatar, it will be really weird because I show my face everywhere. On all my streams, I've always showed my face. When I talk about my company on podcast or talks or everything, I always show my face. So I don't have a problem with that. And so, yeah, that's why I think it would be weird to switch to a virtual avatar. Also, I've done some experimentation with that, and it was fun, really fun. But in the same time, I couldn't. There's no facial expression, and I found it very hard to express what you want without facial expressions. Maybe because I'm not a native English speaker, and so I read a lot people through their face. So I'm not sure exactly what to do as a virtual production. I really like the concept, and also whatever I try with my setup, I feel that because I feel that it's not, I'm not going to reach the kind of setup that professional streamers have without a massive investment. I don't have a dedicated room that I could completely redecorate, and I still want to do some cool stuff, and I also want to do more tech stuff. So I'd love to play more with a virtual production setup, but I'm just not sure what will be the vibe. What can we do? Like, should we have something a bit traditional, like for interviews, where you have people seated around the table and you have a fake table? I don't know. Something to take in consideration also is that my guests don't have green screen. So you see them through their webcam, or usually they just have a webcam from their computer. Sometimes they even join on a phone. I had some guests joining from their phone. So it has to be very simple for them. And so if it's just them having like if there is a big contrast between what you see from my end and what you see on their end, it may be really odd. So I don't know how to fit that together. Maybe the interviews need to stay as they are, and the coffee catch up and the rest of the content can be moved to something different. So there is a bigger gap between the two. I don't know. To be honest, right now I'm so open to suggestions. Even the colors, the channels, everything can be changed. I mean, that's kind of the point, right? That's the fun part of live streaming. Always tweaking around, always adapting, always changing things. And now I just don't know exactly what I can do, what I can try to do, what would be interesting to do. Sometimes I see some streamers having very cool setup and very cool layouts, and every time I see that, I'm like, oh, I want to do something like that. And then I guess it's just a creative aspect, just having the lead, having a concept, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's it. And then I can do it, and then I can try to find how to make it work. And that's almost the easy part. As soon as I know exactly what I want to end up with, it's slightly easier to get to it and just Google the right thing, rather than when you're trying to find inspiration, you're just trying things around, but you're not really looking for the right thing. Zappa, guest avatar in the sofa. Yeah. Avatars are cool, but I'm not an artist, so creating avatars for everyone, big no. Big no. Unless one of you wants to help me out with that, I'll send you a picture of my guest. You create a quick avatar. But then I would be worried that the message doesn't work the same way. When you have an entrepreneur on the interview talking about some personal stuff, it's personal because you see the face. You see that right now they get more excited about what they're talking about. Sometimes I've seen that in actually a lot of the AMAs we've done. The person is like talking about the business, but they have been talking about the business many times, so they kind of have their own speech ready. But then at some point you feel that you touch on something more personal, something they are excited to talk about because they don't necessarily have the opportunity to talk about that often. And so you can see it physically, and also with the face, with the voice. It's everything coming together, and so you see the excitement. And I wouldn't want to miss that, really. Yin, she say, I think live video and webcam is a must-have. Yes, no, I completely agree. Yes, live video, for sure. Zappa, you said, to be fair, voice only would have been, I don't know what's the word here, better than an avatar. Discussion, it takes the focus from what the person is saying to how uncanny valley is. That's right, but in the same time, I'd say it depends. It can be hard to convey passion through voice only when you're not a native English speaker, and so you have some people that the way they say things, they don't necessarily show much emotions, or they're looking for the right words, but then when you see them, you see that they actually care, that it emphasizes things. Or when you ask a question and the person is like, you realize like, oh, that was a big deal for them, or they think about it. So I feel that the visual actually adds to it, and that's what I find a bit frustrating with some podcasts, like audio only podcast, is that you have the information, so the content is here, but it could be anyone speaking. That doesn't make much difference. I don't feel the connection the same way as if I can see the person, if I can read them. and not just listen to them. But I guess it depends on the people. Some people are big fans of audio-only podcasts. And actually, for a while, I was transforming the video AMAs into audio-only. And then I stopped because I had... So initially, we had the video game in the middle of the interview. And so it made sense to skip it when you do the audio only. And then I was thinking, well, then it's just a discussion and doesn't add much. Now that we just keep entirely the gaming part, it will make sense to do it again. But then, I don't know, if people want to listen without the video, they can do it too on YouTube. So that's the same, right? Yinch, you say there could be ways to frame those into newer settings, but losing the liveness. Yeah, that's right. But I like the live part. I mean, it doesn't have to be live, but... Oh, you say not losing liveness. Okay. Typo. Yeah, that changed the entire sentence. Yes. I think being live is more raw. You know, it's unedited, and I would certainly find it easier to book my guest if it wasn't live, but I think I would be so tempted to edit stuff and to spend hours and hours to make it just look good and neat and just keep the important part. While actually, because it's live, you can't change what you said. You can't redo it. You can't re-say when you made a mistake there. It's too late. You said it. Let's own it and let's go for it. And I feel that when you're not live, you may be tempted to just say, oh, actually, I've made a mistake. Could we just cut this part and I reset this part? And I really don't really like that. It's like this week, for example, I was asked by the company of a previous guest to remove the video from the channel, and I did it because if someone doesn't want the interview to be out there available, then that's okay. But I found it interesting because they said it was because they changed a bit the narrative and the focus for the company. So I guess they may have been pivoting. And so they found the video to be not necessarily aligned with that. And so they prefer to get it removed because it could be confusing for some people. And I understand that. And in the same time, I'm wondering if I'd actually prefer, as an entrepreneur, I'm thinking maybe that's part of the life of a company, you know, you can't have everything up to date all the time. And I think that's something I've made peace with as an entrepreneur. There are some things where I explained things a certain way last year, and now I explain things slightly differently. But that's okay. I like the fact that people can have different versions. They can understand the progression. They can understand that there are changes. But in the same time, we pivoted. And so we didn't really give much interviews or talk much about what we do publicly before the pivot. So I'm thinking maybe I will also do the same if it was contradictory or confusing for some people, or if it was appearing very high in the research. I don't know, but I'm wondering because I know we have a bunch of people on the chat that have their own company. How do you deal with that? Do you remove content that may be outdated about your company, or is it just like that's part of the life of the company? Because I'm focusing on early stage startup for the AMA, I'm thinking startups are always evolving and always pivoting and changing, and I'm thinking maybe at some point most of my guests will ask me to do the same. Most guests will ask me to remove their video because it's been a long time and they don't really do that anymore, so they don't want to show this specific thing. Like or explain things the same way. I don't know. What do you think? Is this something also you care about for your company? Hinge say you don't actively remove old videos. Yeah, me neither. Hinge, I'm not famous enough to care. Well, I don't think it's really about being famous. I think it depends on how many videos are out there. Like, if you don't have many videos about your company or much content, and the only thing that shows up when you Google the name of your company is from 5 years ago and is outdated, then I understand. But if you create regular content, I actually like the fact that you look back and you're like, oh, I was saying this way a few years ago, and now it has evolved, and I think it's actually a good thing for people looking at your company to see that you're not just new and just coming to the market, but you have a history and you have experience, and you're not just staying with the same word or same way of doing things. Zappa, you say, I have videos of me when I was younger and edgier, and I still leave them online. That's the journey I went through to get there. Yes, I don't know if it's a bit edgy, if it's the right thing or not, but I completely agree. Yes, and same with the pictures. When you Google your name, now there's always some picture that were less good, or you used to put your hair this way, and actually it's not that great, but you didn't realize that, and that's okay. I mean, some people have seen this picture, maybe they can recognize you from an event or something, and that's what it was. Roy, you say that space would make a cool gallery. Yes, the Unreal project, actually, one of the assets that I took was kind of a gallery, futuristic gallery, to show exhibitions and to show like some art on display. So yes, that's you get the vibe. And Zappa, you say, Yin sure not famous enough to care yet. I don't think it has to do with being famous. I mean, of course, if you get famous, you don't want to have all stuff that people ask you about years after and everything. So you try to clean up your online image and what people can find about you. But I don't think it's necessarily about being famous, more about, lots of people don't really keep that much information about you. They need to put you in a specific box. And so when you do one thing and then a few years after you do something else, you still have old stuff coming back at you all the time. For example, this week, I was briefly exchanging, so we did some PR stuff, and I didn't realize someone I knew was now working for publication related to AI. When I've met him years ago, he was in VR. And so I was like, oh, I didn't know you were doing that now. Even though I could have known, because I remember seeing a tweet now that I think about it. And so he told me, yeah, I still see you as the VR girl. And I'm like, well, yeah, like many people. And I still receive lots of messages from people I haven't spoken to for years, who still think that I am into VR and doing only VR stuff. And so, it takes a long time for people to put you in a different box. And so the last thing you want to do, that's actually what I say to lots of people that I mentor through different programs and stuff, is that you want to be coherent. And so you don't want to have one website to say one thing about you and the other website saying another thing. But I feel that interviews are slightly different, because it's a snapshot of a specific moment. And so while there is no excuse to not have your website updated, well, I say that, but my website is not, well, could use some refresh, but there is no excuse to have your website not up to date or saying something very, very outdated, or your LinkedIn profile saying something completely different from your Twitter. These kind of things kind of lose people. They don't know where you fit. They don't know what you do really. But I feel that videos and content are slightly different. It was something you said in a context when you were doing this thing, and for me it's more of a snapshot that happened in a certain context, and then things evolve, and that's okay and that's good. But maybe that's just me. Maybe I've just made peace with this kind of video, because now I do the videos and things change. But I hope that not all my guests will ask me to remove their videos just because what they do is slightly different from what they said, or because they have moved on, or whatever. Because I think it was very interesting to discuss with all of them and, understand what they had in mind at the specific time, what the challenges were. And also over time to reflect on entrepreneurs and the different challenges they're facing depending on the external context. When we started the AMA, there were the video game aspects, but there were also no COVID, and so we tried to mention in the most recent AMAs COVID and how these entrepreneurs have faced that, how they have just what they have done with this situation, if they have done anything, and that's another aspect now that is here. But I'm not going to remove the old videos because of that, and it's interesting to see changes. So the next live AMA will actually be on the 17th. I haven't yet announced it, but oh crap, that's actually next week. That's coming fast. And that's going to be quite interesting. So I am going to announce it in the coming days, so in the week to come. One thing that I am a bit sad about is that we haven't had a woman entrepreneur on the stream for quite some time. And I'm not trying to do 50-50. That would be too much constraint, and I'm not trying to do that necessarily. But I try to have regular women on the stream and make sure that sometimes when we had a bunch of men coming, I'm like, oh, I need really to find more women to come. I have to be honest, so far, during the summer and for the past few months, every time I've tried to reach out to a woman entrepreneur, I've been ghosted. No answer at all to any of my messages. So that's a bit of a shame. And so yeah, I'll keep trying. It's just because I have limited time to find founders. If you know any cool women founder, I'd love to talk to them and try to convince to come on the stream. I don't know if it's because it's live, video, or anything. But yeah, I've been ghosted by most of the women I've been talking to. So hopefully that will change with September and everything. But yeah, and if you have any suggestion, not necessarily women founder, but always happy to chat with founders and potentially have them on the stream. We have one for September, and now since we moved to once a month, I feel like it's slightly easier to just have a good flow of founders coming in. Yin should say it was useful to listen back to podcasts from years ago. I have not changed much in my outlook. The tech is different, but the mission is the same. Yes. You know someone perfect. I'll put some notes because I have terrible memory. And I'll remind it to you in the coming days if you don't think about that. Yes, for sure. That would be super cool. And it's good to show that you have different type of entrepreneurs. And yeah, it's not just all the same type of people, even though you have one type of entrepreneur that you see all the time on TechCrunch and all this publication, but that's not it. And you know, Yinch, you shared an article this morning, I think, or last night on the Discord about, it was very interesting. It was the story of an entrepreneur who created a new social media, and the way that they had to inject themselves money into the company when they were trying to exit and trying to sell, and then there had been some failure along the way. So it was super interesting, but in the same time, I felt a bit like this person was like trying to follow the big model, you know, like Mark Zuckerberg story. And I think we need to see more stories written about just founders who have done a successful business, have managed to make money, not just take money from investors, and have managed to do some cool stuff. Potentially exited the company, but you know, not necessarily with huge funding rounds, or you know, this kind of other stories, because getting money from investors is just the beginning. It's not the win on its own, so it shouldn't be that celebrated, or it shouldn't be the only model that is celebrated as much as it is today. So especially now as a founder, that's something that frustrates me a bit. And I have been sharing less stories on my social media and less stuff, not just because I've been busy, but also because when I read the news, I just feel less excited about some funding announcements, just because I want to see more. I want to see different things. Rob, you say Dr. Natalia Bailey of Action Systems has done interviews. Okay, I don't know her. Okay, I'll check her out. Definitely will check her out. The thing also is, let's face it, we are a small channel. We are still very small, so we can't really attract to big companies or established companies. Like if they check the YouTube and they see that we are like maximum 100 views per videos, it's a bit low for them. So we need to grow the channel, but that's good because September is here and we're back with some AMAs. So we'll definitely do more streams. I want to create more content also, like other content. I have a few ideas for videos in mind, including some catch up on the on my first vlog. I think it's been almost a year now, and it's outdated. So some updates on my company, what I've been up to for the past year. I also would like to do a video. I think in the last stream we talked about that. I think it was you, Roy, actually, who was interested in potentially having a video that talks about when you're struggling with other stuff in your life, and kind of some reflections on that. So definitely planning to do that. And I recently done some PR efforts. Did it work or not? I don't know yet. I mean, I don't know, not because I'm waiting for some more publication to cover or news or anything, but because I'm not sure if it's positive or not. I'm not sure if we did it successfully or not. I haven't yet set my mind on that. But I think having some kind of first DIY PR postmortem would be interesting too. Just to go over what worked, what maybe didn't, what could have worked, what maybe worked, but that's okay. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about that for the past week, so I think I'll also put some thoughts on paper on that. And luckily, now that I'm in an environment where it's easier to record, less noise outside. So yeah, hopefully I'll be managing to do that in the coming months. But yeah, I think that's about it for today. We've been talking about a bunch of stuff. Wow, it's been already more than 2 hours we're together. I can't believe you're still around. I love that. Thank you so much. So as I said, next stream is going to be on Friday this week. I'm going to do some announcements. We're going to talk about audio technology, and we should have a live demo of some audio tech. Finger crossed. We'll see. I'm not doing that myself. That's our guest who is going to show us their tech. So that's going to be quite interesting. And then, so check out the social media or the Discord where I'll do the announcements. And there's also another project I wanted to do. I don't know if I'll do it on stream or if I even will do it at all. I was thinking about upgrading my camera, creating a DIY camera using a Raspberry Pi, but it's a bit expensive, like £80. That doesn't sound like much, but that's still a budget, so I don't know. I'd like to do it at some point. I think that would also be quite fun to do together. Like, it shouldn't be that hard, but that could be interesting to see the difference live between the cameras and everything. So I'd like to do that, but I don't know. That's kind of a techie project, and I'm thinking I shouldn't be doing my techie project on my own, but more share them with everyone. So yeah, I'll try maybe to do that one day if I decide to invest in the kit to buy it. We'll see. And yeah, and that's about it. If some of you are not on the Discord, we'll definitely recommend. This week we've been celebrating the creation of a company from one of our members, Yinch, also, who launched his first PR. It's not his first PR, but who launched some PR stuff, pretty interesting. So I can't wait to actually hear more about it and see more coverage of that. If you want to share Yinch on the Discord, do not hesitate. Like, if you need some likes or claps on some post or whatever, you know, we're around. And also, before I forget, big thanks to Metamurai for the cheers, and also thank you to Andrea and Yinch. You are both members on the Buy Me a Coffee page, and that is really amazing. Really, I love your support. Roy, you say, I want to create a DIY camera thing as well. That'd be interesting to hear. Yeah, I've seen some videos, and my partner actually sent it to me, saying that apparently the specs should be better than my current webcam, and I'm sure we can find some use having two cameras. So that could be pretty cool, and just doing it would be pretty nice. So that would be a way of upgrading without investing in a full camera, because that's too expensive. So yeah, and that's a cool project, to be honest. So I'll see. I'd like to invest in that, and I know it sounds ridiculous, you know, £80, that's nothing. But in the same time, when you're bootstrapping, every pound is something. You know, you end up comparing everything and trying to spend as little as possible, because that actually extend your runway a little bit. And you know, it's £20 here, £20 there. It goes pretty fast. You know, there's so many things that cost just £20, £50 that I'd love to get, and I'm like, nope, not now. We'll see later on. So yeah, I'll let you know if we do that. I'm really thinking about it. That would be pretty cool. Anyway, I'll let you go. It has been really interesting. If you like this kind of format, like, you know, the commenting and workshop things, and you have some ideas for some good workshops that could be interesting, something maybe better than what I found about virtual production, I'm definitely happy to get into that. Even if it's more practical, like I was hoping that maybe we could, you know, download one of their thing and maybe try out. There are some workshops or some tutorials that actually do that. You know, you download the pack and then you try to replicate with them, or to experiment with what they explain to you in the right environment. And I should have maybe done more research on the workshop, but then I thought it would be a bit more focused on not just big production, but also smaller productions. Anyway, I'll see you next week, Friday afternoon, for the next AMA. And in the meantime, feel free to reach out on Twitter, especially on Twitter. And yeah, keep the discussion going. Enjoy the end of the weekend. I don't know for you, but here, I don't know about the weather. 5 minutes it's raining, 5 minutes it's big sunshine. So hopefully tomorrow will be nice. And see you soon. Enjoy the rest of the day. Bye everyone.